Okay, and we're going to talk about now a little bit about the Native Americans. You can't talk about the American West unless you talk about Native Americans and the trials and tribulations that they faced. Okay, so the culture of the Plains Indians. Some Native American nations of the Great Plains lived in communities and farmed and hunted. Most Native Americans of the Great Plains were nomadic in nature, meaning they moved from place to place in search of food. Oftentimes, they would follow the herds of the buffalo. Now, Native American groups of the Great Plains had several things in common. They lived in extended family networks and had a close relationship with nature. They were divided into bands with a governing council. Most Native American groups practice religion based on a belief in the spiritual power of the natural world. Okay, their way of life or their culture comes under pressure. It had been under pressure for many years from advancing white settlement. In 1862, the Sioux in Minnesota, they launched a major uprising against the settlement. The Dakota Sioux agreed to live but what happens basically, generally with the Native Americans every time, is they have to end up living on a reservation in Minnesota in exchange for annuities paid by the federal government to the reservation dwellers. Well, the annuities were very small and often taken from them by American traders. In 1862, Congress delayed the payments of these annuities, so some Sioux began to starve. Okay, so Chief Little Crow asked traders to give his people food on credit. His request was denied, so the Dakota began an uprising that led to the deaths of hundreds of settlers. The U.S. Army was sent patrols into the northern Great Plains to prevent further uprisings among the Sioux there. The Lakota Sioux, who were nomads who feared losing their hunting grounds. So in December 1866, Chief Red Cloud's forces defeated a U.S. Army detachment in Montana in what is called Fetterman's Massacre. In the 1860s, tensions between the Cheyenne and Arapaho Native Americans and the miners in Colorado began to increase. Bands of Native Americans attacked wagon trains and ranches in Colorado. The territorial governor ordered the Native Americans to peacefully surrender at Fort Lyon. Chief Black Kettle brought hundreds of Cheyenne to the fort to negotiate. Instead of negotiating peace with the Cheyenne, the U.S. Army attacked them in what became known as the Sand Creek Massacre. In 1867, Congress formed an Indian Peace Commission which proposed creating 2 large reservations on the plains. The Bureau of Indian Affairs would run these reservations. The U.S. Army would deal with any groups that did not report to or remain on these reservations. This plan obviously was doomed for failure. Signing treaties did not ensure that the government or Native Americans would abide by their terms. Okay, so the last Native American wars. By the 1870s, buffalo were rapidly disappearing. Okay, and by 1889, very few buffalo remained, almost became largely extinct. Buffalo were killed oftentimes by migrants crossing the Great Plains, professional buffalo hunters who wanted their hides, or sharpshooters hired by railroads, and hunters who just killed them for sport. Many Native Americans left the reservations to hunt buffalo on the open plains. In addition, when American settlers violated the treaties, the Native Americans, they say they saw no reason to abide by them. Okay, so in 1876, the Lakota left their reservation to hunt near the Bighorn Mountains in the southeastern Montana. The U.S. government sent Army troops after the Lakota. George A. Custer was the commander of the 7th Cavalry. He divided his forces and attacked the Lakota and Cheyenne warriors camped at the Little Bighorn River. The Native Americans killed all the soldiers, though. Sitting Bull and his followers fled to Canada as a result of this. Other Lakotas were forced to return to the reservation. The Nez Perce, led by Chief Joseph, they refused to move to a reservation in Idaho in 1877. They fled, but were later forced to surrender and move to Oklahoma. At the Lakota Sioux Reservation in 1890, the Lakota were ordered by a government agent to stop the ghost dance, which was a ritual that was celebrating the hope that the whites would disappear. The buffalo would return, and Native Americans would reunite with their ancestors. The dancers fled the reservation and were chased by U.S. troops to Wounded Knee Creek. At this place, many Lakota were killed. This was the final Native American resistance to federal authority. Okay, assimilation. Some Americans had opposed the treatment of Native Americans. Some people thought that the situation between whites and Native Americans could be improved if Native Americans could assimilate or be absorbed into American society as landowners and citizens. This included breaking up reservations into individual allotments where Native Americans would live in families and support themselves. This became the policy when Congress passed the Dawes Act in 1887. It was doomed to failure. Few Native Americans had the training or enthusiasm for farming and or ranching. And they found oftentimes that the allotments were too small to be profitable. Few Native Americans were willing or able to adopt the American settlers' lifestyles in place of their own culture at this time. Okay, that ends this video over settling of the West. And as always, look for a short quiz. Thank you. Bye.